Hello and welcome to Kunj, a platform where we delve into the stories of preservation of art, culture, and heritage. Today, on the occasion of Women's Day, we are honored to have with us Miss Anjana Shakya, who is a very dynamic personality, if you ask me, and she's been a part of so many human rights and stuff like that. She's led an alliance of protecting women and children from trafficking in Nepal. She's also led the Himalayan human rights, and there's so much more to her. So today we, as Kunj, is on a mission of preserving the Nepal's art, culture, and heritage. We are here with the co-founder of Bodhisattva. So welcome, ma'am, to Kunj.
So thank you for inviting me to this interview.
Thank you so much for being here with us. So, we already know that you've been a part of so much more than just Bodhisattva. Mm-hmm. So, if you would want to describe yourself in your own words, how would you do that?
Once I graduated from Smith College in 1991, even before that, I think I was very, very conscious of the women's rights issues. The discrimination that women go through, the way women are not supported to really be who they are or were. And so I think I was very conscious of that since I was very young. And actually thinking back, even when I wrote my application to Smith College, I wrote about these whole issues, like how girls are treated as Kumari, the goddess Kumari, and then once they start to become older, then how they start to face discrimination. And I want to, change the status of women in Nepal. That's what I wrote. I forgot all about it, and I think very recently I started to remember it, and I was like, okay, I did work on, changing the status of women's rights, women's status quo in Nepal, and I really started to. I was very, very influenced by when I went through a Kumari Puja. Actually, any girl can be a Kumari for a day, and they're worshipped. And I think when I was done that, when I was part of that Kumari Puja, I was taken to the Basantapur Kumari, the Royal Kumari. Others were not interested to go, but I was keen to go. And I was I think when I went there, the thing that really struck me was she was in the throne, respected by everybody, and the way she was worshipped. It's not just the worshipping, it's just the aura she had. What I felt was, oh my God, the girls can be anything in the world. They don't have to stick up to any gender roles. She can be whoever she is and be worshipped, be respected by everybody. Then it was the king who worshipped her. So I think that really kind of changed my whole mindset in terms of what women can be and should be and what they don't have. And also that really made me think what it is. And also the upbringing in Theravada Buddhism, where compassion, respect, dignity for all was, I think, part of my life, part of my upbringing. I think that really shaped who I am now, I think. So I was interested both in culture as well as, the tradition, and I was interested really from the very beginning in terms of women's rights. So that's what I am. That's what I would say. For most of my life, I spent a lot in terms of changing the laws, building leadership of women, empowerment of women. Also during the armed conflict, I was one of the very few women who really worked with trying to bring peace in this country, working in the human rights sector, trying to deal with the human rights violations during that time and addressing for the justice of the people. So I think, and then the other part was really the culture, tradition, art, which I took it kind of simultaneously. So I started Beyond Beijing Committee, right after the Beijing conference. During the Beijing conference, my whole focus was how to make women's voices be heard from all over the country. I was not interested in data. I was not interested in a research or report. I wanted the women to have their voice. I wanted them to be able to say what are the issues for women, and not just educated women who have access to everything, like even like myself, who I would say like 0.00 whatever percent at that time. I wanted women to be able to speak, within the national consultation to, with the regional national consultation and to Beijing. I really wanted their voices to be heard, and that's what I did. Then I started Beyond Beijing Committee, and just for women, just to be able to see women from all sectors. I mean, I was really questioned for taking women from all across the country, from all different ethnicity and all from different diversity. Like, why should women participate in Beijing who cannot speak in English? I'm like, English is one tool, but there are lots of other ways to communicate. And actually, the women I focus, I fundraised for 20 women, but I registered for all the women who participated in Beijing, the Fourth World Women's Conference. I think I was in China's embassy for like a month or something, because I was doing all the logistic arrangements too, registration, all the visa, whatever. I was coordinating everything. And it was amazing that for them to be able to go and make friends and be able to sell their books. So it's like, I think, for me, the way now I see myself is like, there's so many aspects to oneself. That the way, whether it's in the women's rights field or whether it's in the art and culture, it's, I think I worked simultaneously along with my husband. My husband helped me with my work and I helped him with his work. So we kind of work together. So I started Beyond Beijing Committee, simultaneously started Himalayan Human Rights Monitors. At similar time, we also started the ATWIN, Alliance Against Human Trafficking in Nepal. So those are the major three institutions I started.
With so much of the work that you've been doing throughout the decades of your life, and I think it's very difficult to pin you up to one particular thing that you define yourself as this particular person or this particular person who is dedicated to this or dedicated to that. Because listening to you, I feel like a part of you has been into all of it. So belonging to a Newari community, it must, talking of that time period, you must have faced a lot of challenges, like even as just being a woman. So like the way you're active into women's rights and stuff like that, did it hold some importance during that time that influenced you to work towards it so deeply?
I think, I started to feel, as long as my mother was alive, I had a very, very easy life. But as soon as she passed away, I started to realize what is to be a girl. And then after I got married, I saw in a major way what is to be a woman. I think those are things that really made me really feel that, although, like Kumari and other goddesses, they're worshipped, but, in reality, the status of women is so different. The way they are treated, the discriminations they face. So I think, growing up in a joint family and having more privilege than rest of my female cousins, I think that becomes a stark difference of what is the reality. Because I saw, I was the only one who went to St. Mary's. None of my female cousins even went to good schools. Whereas my brothers and my cousins, they went to St. Xavier's and other, good boarding schools. So I think that really shows where the discrimination is and was. And that really made me really want to do something. I always used to fight with my male cousins and say, girls are better than boys. I mean, that has been something, as far as I can remember, that's what I always said, girls are better than boys. And we used to have debates then it used to be called Min Pachas Bida, the 2 months holiday. And that's like one of the major things we did was who was better. And I was the lead. I was a small kid, but I used to be the lead and be more vocal about why girls are better than boys. So I think because of the privileges boys got, and whether it's from the mothers, whether it's from the system, I think I was acutely aware of what girls face. And probably if I was also treated as the rest of the girls, probably maybe I wouldn't feel it so, I wouldn't be so conscious of it. So I think that really helped me to understand, and especially after marriage, I really felt, something has to be done. And there has to be more role models where women can look up, whether you're married or not. There are other opportunities where you can really make a difference and where you can really strive for. And I would say, in all of that, my brothers, my husband, later on my kids, they all supported me. So, and in terms of women, my grandmother was very, very conservative. She always was into boys were better than girls, and I was trying to make her see that girls are better than boys. I think that was something it always hit me since I was very, very young, because my grandmother, she only had my mother, so she was very. I think she regretted not having a son also, although she loved my mother very, very much. But I think that whole gender patriarchal value system was very, very entrenched. And every time we had any official document, she'll ask me to read, because I would be there more often than my brothers. And then as soon as my brothers come, can you read this? Because she was not confident that whatever I read was exactly what was in the document. And I used to get really pissed off. So I was always I wanted to make her say that, girls are better. So it was there.
Sure. I mean, listening to all of it, you seem like a little bit of a rebel kid during your time.
I was. I did everything that girls are not supposed to do. And I was I'm not going to be a sissy what girls are viewed as, timid and crying and all that stuff. I'm no way. I am as tough as any boy. That was my attitude, So I did everything, in sports, in whether fighting with the boys, whatever. Also, I had mostly my brothers, so I think that also helped me. And also, I was never told I was a girl and I couldn't do X, Y, Z. So that made me really think that I can do everything. So I was very, very tomboyish.
So you were one of the boys. And talking about all the rebellion and all the women rights and stuff like that, how, at what point did your perspective go towards art and culture and stuff like that as well?
When you're talking about, whether I got support from women or not, I think, my aunts were quite supportive of me. And because I was very vocal, I was respected regardless of my gender. My voice was very well respected in my extended family. And I think that makes a huge difference in terms of a girl's confidence. And I would like to, even before we get into your question, I would like to say that, girls should be respected as equal, from the very beginning. Then, you start to really build your self-confidence and your self-perception, which is very, very important. And that is what I would say the family institution can make a huge difference in terms of what it is. But in terms of art, growing up in Newar, Basantapur, Indrachok, and Makham Bahal, I think that really made I became aware of, the art around, and especially in the Kathmandu Darbar Square. I was oh my God, this is so beautiful. I was always aware of it. Not that, anyone was making me aware, or, it's anyone elders telling me what to do. Growing up with my grandmother was my mother's mother. I grew up with very modern, at that time, New Road and St. Mary's and all that. But I also grew up with my grandmother, who was, very conservative and very strong-willed. I think I got best of both. And I think being in that Bahal, or, the traditional monastery setting, also gave me a tool really to understand more than what most girls at that time understood, and And my father, my father and my uncles having this hotel cozy. So there were like a lot of, you get like Western kids, you get Indian kids, coming for vacation. And then at that time, I was like nobody asked me to work in the hotel, None of my cousins even went to the hotel, in our hotel, and I would be like really running around and talking to them and taking them around, Darbar Square or, Kathmandu Darbar Square or Patan or Bhaktapur. And I think those really, it's growing up, really made me understand the kind of heritage we have and the pride we should have for it. I think it started then. But I think as I started to understand more, and especially from my husband, who at a time when people, young men would be buying into motorcycles and cars and whatever, or, he was like totally interested in how to bring change in the living art, because he grew up, in the areas of Patan where statues were being made. And for him, it's like, unless we really have dignity, respect, and financial benefit for the living artists, it's not going to continue. And we have one of the best in the world. And if we don't do anything in terms of working with the artists, in terms of bringing, working for the quality, making it financially, good, because if it is not good, then this next generation is not going to take it up. And then they would rather go for some other option, which is more financially lucrative than traditional art. So he focused on that. And I think, so when I used to come back from the States, every time, because I came back almost every 6 months because I already had a kid by that time. So like I used to go with them to different artists' place. I used to look at all the artwork that was being made. And I think it really started to, I felt I should support it too. So this was like early, mid-80s. Okay. And so we both really felt very strongly that we have really a world-class heritage, and we really need to preserve, promote, and influence the younger generation to be part of it. So that's what we did. And the other part for me was all men. Wherever you go, it's all men. And I think that it was very, very uncomfortable for me, because I think they were not used to communicating with women at an equal footing. And I think that was something a lot of them had different. A lot of them didn't even talk to me. That's what it was. I would go because I was so excited, but especially in the earlier days, it was like the artist would not talk to me. I'll just go with my husband and my kids, because part of it also was like taking the kids to the artist's place where they make, because we were not into like making a factory. We were really, and still, is that it should be in a traditional system, and we only make masterpieces, so it doesn't matter, that every process is done within each artist's home, homes, especially homes. So we used to visit all of that, and I think visiting and talking to artists really made me even more interested. And during the armed conflict, we used to have store in Palku, and I used to just go and sit, because I would be like so traumatized by all the torture from both sides, state and the Maoist. I would listen to all of that, because that's where we had Human Rights Lifeline 24-hour service. So I get to hear, document all of that, the tortures they're going through and what could be done next. So I used to be very traumatized. I would just go and sit in the store, and that would really help me calm down. Just being, surrounded by artwork, just like helped me a lot. Until then, I still didn't understand like how that can really influence your mentality. Like once we started this gallery, actually we start to realize how you can really change the whole sphere to make it more peaceful, more compassionate. It can be a healing space. It's not only just, a feast for your eyes, but it can be a very, very healing space. After COVID, especially during COVID, my husband passed, and we used to chant the stotras, and then we used to also put on the phone so my friend in New York can listen to it too.
Okay.
And she is American, so. But what she told me really hit me is that she said when you chant, it really helps her too, because she also lost her husband more or less the same time. So we said, okay, why don't we do healing through taras? And actually, we had only taras here, and it was amazing to feel. I mean, anyone who came in. I mean, we also didn't allow a lot of people in. It was during COVID, so we only allowed. It was with appointment, and we allowed only 5 people at any given time, and people could just like meditate. Just be in peace. I mean, there was no limit in terms of how long they could sit here, but it was like really a healing. We wanted to give that healing experience for them, and I think a lot of people did feel that. And then consecutively we did Karuna is Karuna, because we wanted to extend that to really like the way people went through all the traumas and all the difficulties, that the pain they went through. We wanted to do something that really, again, which not only kind of heals, but also transcends them to another level. So we do a lot of like these stuff. Then we did Prakriti, where the gods reside. So it's like we started to do more thematically. Like when we did Prakriti, where the gods reside, because we felt the whole climate change. Kathmandu used to be much cooler. I remember, when we did our last exam, in December, our fingers used to be like so stiff. It was so cold in the class. We actually used to make mittens so that we could use our fingers. But now, if you look at it, it's like so much warmer. And like most of the time, it used to be like 2. It goes from -1 to 1. Or most of the time, it'll be like minimum weather would be like 1, 2, 1, 2. But now, where do you find that? I mean, the climate change is just unbelievably changing, and it has to do also with our lifestyle. Traditionally, I used to remember my grandmother saying, don't waste water. You have to conserve the water. You cannot use it, spend it. Spend it. It's like spending like money. It's like the more you overuse water, the more you're using money. That's equivalent to money.
Okay.
And I think that whole way of thinking, recycling everything. The straws that were which we tie our vegetables, the greens especially, that would be made into a little ball, so it could be like a scrub when you're doing the dishes. The ashes were used. Now everyone uses liquid soap, but then it was ashes. So like little things that they did really made a huge difference to the climate, to the environment. Not using, like my grandmother used to be so pissed off when I buy her more clothes. And she's like, why do you need it? It's such a waste. So the whole way of thinking of life was so different. I mean, she would not waste anything. She even used to make pickles from pumpkin cover, this skin. And I remember one of my aunts said, who is that stingy woman? I said, my grandmother. And she got such a shock, she shut off, because my grandmother was a very rich person. And but their way of life was so different. Why do you need too many clothes? You use it for rituals and pujas. And earlier I used to be quite mad at her and said, you're wasting money, and instead you could give it to, street children or street elderly or whatever, health sector or whatever. But once I did a special oral history with her, for one credit for my college, I started to realize totally, I saw the whole picture totally differently in terms of what their lifestyle means and what education means for them. And I think that I got it very, very differently. So when we did Prakriti, where the gods reside, it's like really going back to the roots and really being more respectful to the earth, to Mother Earth, and which is like part of our culture. It's like nothing new. We are not talking about, it's not rocket science. It's just like what our culture and tradition is all about. So we started to, like when you're worshipping any statue, we are not worshipping just the statue. We are not worshipping Buddha or, Tara or Kumari or Padmasambhav. It's like we're worshipping earth, because that's what it's all about. When you have lotus, you have water, like everyone, even the simplest one, even what you have right behind you, it has lotus, which means it's on top of a water. And we are not only just worshipping Buddha, we are worshipping the lotus, we are worshipping water, So, like in other forms, you have so many other things, all the beings, birds, whatever. So we wanted to just get back and say, be mindful of what you're doing, and it's our culture to respect all of that, not just statues, or any kind of gods and goddesses. So it's like then we had Shakti, so it like really worshipping the feminine quality. During the earthquake, it was very interesting. I did a research because I really felt that the people from the core parts of Kathmandu Valley were left out. Mm-hmm. And being part of the core part of Kathmandu, I really felt, their voices should be documented, their realities should be documented. So I really also worked not only in the periphery. I mean, we supported like 10, 15 districts. But in terms of really conducting the research, I did between with the core part of Kathmandu, Lalitpur and Bhaktapur. And it was amazing experience talking to the people. Like they said, even from my studies of geology, I felt with the kind of Richter scale we had, it said 7.8, probably it was more than 8. Mm-hmm. There could have been a lot of destruction, with human as well as infrastructure, but it was far less than what could have been. And a lot of people said it was the mother goddesses that really protected them. If you look at the Kathmandu Valley, you will see everywhere, you'll see all the mother goddesses. And if you look at the old part of Kathmandu, there's always 8 mother goddesses protecting the whole, whether it's Kathmandu, 3 cities, 3 countries, whatever you want to say. It's always that whole tantric protection has always been there. So I think that also really made me kind of focus on this mother goddesses. And so for last year, around this time, around March 8th, we had only Shakti. Not as Shakti as all the mother goddesses, nothing to do with Hindu or Buddhist or whatever, but all the mother goddesses. So just before this, we had, then we had the wealth deities, Uchasma Jambala, the Uchasma Jambala's Tupu. That was something my husband had been worked for last 10 years, and even past his time, we were still continuing to work. And so we had that exhibition, and now we are focusing on in between, we had small things. We always have like talk programs, because our thing is not about just looking at to make your feast for your eyes. It's also about education. So like a lot of time we have programs on talk programs on whether it's on climate change, whether it's on different issues on like whether it's on Paras or Coroname or whoever. We also focus on educating the people. So it's like really art is like, I think art is something that whether you're passionate or not, that's what it is. There's no in between. You love it or you don't like it, or you don't care about it. So like a lot of time I don't tell people, we have one of the best and please do come. Because I think, some people really love it, really fall in love. So we also have been doing art competitions and awards. And one of my school childhood friends said, she got so she had never been like so close to a painting, which she bought. And it's just like you either love it or you don't.
Sure.
But I think my whole family is like totally like passionate about it, and like really not only passionate about, like also how do you preserve, promote, and educate, because I think a lot of people don't realize, I think because they see it everywhere, they don't realize the importance of it, because probably also we were traveling globally, so looking at seeing your own art pieces in different museums, I think also gives you totally different perspective and respect for it. So my whole family is like totally into this.
Was it more like a male-dominated sort of industry back then?
It's not really male dominated, but in public, it's always male who is seen. It's like even when you're talking about like who's the wax model, who did the carving, who did whatever. I mean, if you look at especially I think once I started to visit, I really started to see women's involvement in all of it. But women are not in the public sphere. They are privately. They are working. They are helping with the melting or the wax or whatever. They are part and parcel of everything. I mean, maybe it's the leading male who kind of supervises, coordinates everything or whatever, who has more role. But it's the children, it's the grandparents, it's the aunts, everybody. It's in the joint family. Everyone learns. That is, especially in the traditional way. It's in the family they learn how to do it. Mm-hmm. And I started to see where the women's roles are in it when they are put, like things like casting. The direct casting part, where they are melting the metal and putting the heavy stuff on the furnace, whatever. Maybe I haven't seen that part being done by women. Women feel that they could be, a part of it and be visible, recognized for it. But I think also the challenge is like you start in your natal home, but when it is like married, it's difficult to continue what you're doing. I think that has also become a challenge, both for whether it's painting or whether it's statues. I think it is a challenge for women. And so this year I saw the woman who got award last year. Mm-hmm. I saw her coming with her husband. Okay. And I went to him specifically and said, please do support, because I know in this culture, it has to be, a woman can, behind any success, whether male or female, your spouse is behind the whole scene. So I said, please do support her. And he said, yeah, I do. So and I make a point every time to say that whether it's women's rights, if my husband was not behind me supporting with everything, I would not be who I am. And same with my husband's work. I had been behind him with everything. And a lot of time, I think one of the things that my challenge had been, I think everyone sees women as a wife, who is like supported by the husband. I'm not, financially, I'm not supported by my husband. This is my investment too, as much as his. So I think like trying to make people understand I'm also a collector. I'm also like totally active in this, I think is a challenge. Few, I don't know whether they accept it, wholeheartedly or not, but few, I think, take me more seriously. But others, I think they're not used to talking to women. Okay. And, being seen as, Anjana Shakya, Punadai's wife. Sometimes, it makes me really difficult to take it, because I am not just his wife, I'm equal partner. I would say both ways. It's not one way. Both ways we had been, supporting each other. And I make a point to tell everybody that, because it's not about saying that my husband was supporting me. I want every husband to be supporting their wives as a norm, not the other way around only, because a lot of time, things are changing, I do realize that, but I think a lot of time it's women who support the men, and I don't think they get recognized. So it's my way of saying, this way or that way, whether it's male or female, the other really support. Or it could be totally different genders. It's not just in a heterosexual way. So it's very, very different, I would say. But I think it's the support of your spouse, whoever the spouse is. I think it's very, very important, and especially in this sector, I think. I'm trying to encourage them to be, for women to be more active.
And even in Nepali arts, the feminine side of a woman or the feminine parts of a woman is represented so boldly. The contrast to the reality and towards paintings, do we have anything?
I think it's very interesting because if you are looking at gender roles, and especially women, that you have to be timid, you have to be shy, you have to be fully clothed, whatever. If you look at it in the different texts, religious texts, it says exactly what it should look. How the body should look. Some Westerners, some of my Western friends, it's like, it look like Tara and like so sexy, it's like, so young and sexy. And I'm like, what? I don't even think in that way because I was never told that way. And actually I was interviewed by many, especially just before the Kumari Jatra. It used to be Kumari Jatra. I don't know why they turned into Indra Jatra. A lot of people also tried to interview me and make me say that that it's like exploitation more than anything. I'm like, no, it's not. So it's very, very difficult to especially if you're looking at Tara should look like a 16-year-old. And so it's like whether topless or whatever, it's already written, you cannot change. So it's not like artists can do whatever they want. So iconographically, they have to follow the iconography rules. And so with any gods, it is written like right there. The thing is, at the same time, there is like a lot of how you view your body. I mean, if you are looking at the body, I don't think there is need to feel of certain shape, size, whatever, or if you are looking at a body, you don't need. If you're looking at really the text, I mean, I think it should be accepted as whatever, partly nude, whatever. But I think it's the patriarchal value system what really makes us subordinate, that we have to, cover up our bodies, cover up, whatever. I mean, if you look at traditionally, I mean, when we were kids, like when you give birth, a woman would be sitting, whether it's in Bahal or, in Chowk or on the street, and have the party are naked. And nobody thinks twice about it. But now it's with all the, I don't know to say sacralitization, I don't know whether it's more westernization, it's, women's body is seen more, as a commodity and as something sexual. I mean, I when I was growing up, I never saw any woman who had to, cover up like while breastfeeding or taking oil massage. It was all accepted. So I think with time, everything is changing. That's how I would see it. And if you're looking at deities, it's that part still hasn't changed in many ways. And it cannot, because you have to follow the iconography. So whether it's painting or statue, you cannot change. I mean, for those who come here, and also like one of the things we do thematic exhibitions is that they can really also learn about it. So like why we have to follow iconography. There's no other two way about it. So it's like trying to make them learn. I mean, they would say some things which is like totally out of the reality or even our thought pattern. We do say this is what it is, and actually it's the more modern we got, the body of a woman became more of a, seen objectively. But, in the past, it was not that way. And that's something, and also it's like, it's written in the text. This is how it should look. And, some, even my friends would say, like, how come, it's this way? And I'm like, well, this is this way because it's written that way and the artists have to follow it. And how come Tara is always like forever young, something like that. So I think that there's always that, and we also like try to put the text so that people, so this is like from the ancient text, this is from certain books, this is what it looks like, has to look like. So we do put it like for Uchusma Zambala, we had like the whole text that describes how it should look, like a 5-year-old, how the feet should be, how the hand should be, how the facial expression should be, whatever. So we also put the text so that people also understand and also learn to read. Because a lot of, I mean, more than Westerners, I think it's Nepalis who don't like to read. And that's what I have realized. So I think we really try our best to really educate in that way.
In Nepal, I think I hardly see any female collectors. So how has your journey been as a collector?
There are few, very few.
Yes.
They are. And I think, having to be, because again, it's always like, it's the husband's name that goes first. And I'm like, excuse me, the wife is also the collector. And probably she started before the husband. And I think that discussion sometimes becomes difficult because it's hard for people to take it. And for me too, it's like, I think not being viewed as a collector, because I'm seen more of a subordinate of my husband. I mean, definitely I would say he had far more experience, knowledge than I do, because my life was like so much with, the human rights sector,
yes,
women's rights and children's rights sector, women's rights. So I wouldn't say I can compete with his knowledge. But in terms of like really being a collector, I am too. But I think for the artist to understand that, I think it's a next level. There are a few women who are collectors too.
And throughout these years, like that you have been majorly a part of Bodhisattva, and like you do so many things. So then, when was the time that you started focusing more on the gallery part of it, the art?
The art and my lifestyle, my other work, had gone simultaneously, because it was my husband who really, we both were balancing both our work, because he was also, working in human rights, especially during the armed conflict. It was very difficult for us because art was, we are passionate about it, but a call from us could save somebody's life. That became more of a focus than anything else. So at that time, then my son, he took the lead. He was the one who was really, in terms of like buying, it was more of my husband. We sometimes go together, and but my eldest son Prajwal, he was the one who handled the store. And actually, when he went to US to study, I told him, stay in New York for a few years so he could build a network. And he was like, no, I want to come back, because one piece of art is not about just selling one piece. It's like, the work of 7-8 families. So I think that was taking them with us, or my husband, I think really built that whole passion, vision for art. And so I think we did it jointly, but at the same time I was in the US. But he was the one who was more into it, my husband. But we did jointly. It was never like when I really started this or more. But at this point, after he passed away, I felt I should do more. I feel like the women's rights thing in our work should be taken by next generation. I gave majority, most of my life to it. So I am more focused on this, and also it gives me some kind of meaning, more meaningful to me now than before. Before, it's like my heritage, it's beautiful heritage. But now I'm like, this has to be continued. This has to go forward, and especially, have younger generation be part of it. So when I saw you, I was very happy, because I really want younger generation to be more interested, because they are the ones who will take it forward. Because I think I have done enough with my women's rights and girls' rights and other human rights. So I feel like now I have to be more focused in this.
So even the first time that I came to Bodhisattva Gallery, I think you guys were exhibiting Shakti Series 2. Was there any of your favorite or special exhibitions that you did in Bodhisattva?
I think Tara was very, very special. I think because of the time, around that time, I think whoever came here felt the healing feeling. We wanted to give that healing feeling, because it was right after COVID, and where there was so much suffering for a lot of people, and we wanted to give that feeling. And I think the power, the aura it had, it was very, very special. And we will continue to do it with different themes, because it's part of education, not just like looking at different art pieces, but also like understanding what it means. Because a lot of time, I think what happens is, because you see great art everywhere, especially in Kathmandu Valley, I find like even Newars, let alone others, they don't appreciate as they should, because it's everywhere. It's like you take for granted. I think partly my studying in the US really made me understand or see my art, culture, and tradition in totally different lens. My grandmother said I should have, because I did want to go to study in the US for a long time, and she was like totally against it. And I remember her once saying, I should have let you go a long time back, because I think I studied anthropology and women's studies. So I think that whole thing really made it very different, because I told my grandmother, like once in between when I used to come in, she would say, she wanted to do X, Y, Z. And I'm like, okay, go ahead, I'll help you. And earlier I would be like arguing with her, why should you do this? Why should you do that? You're just wasting your money and blah, 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 blah. But then I started to really realize the difference and the importance. So I think when you are out of your environment, you see things more differently, and you start to appreciate it more. And I would say that, my childhood experiences, being in part of, the Basantpur Darbar Square and other Darbar squares, it really made me understand, but I was still probably, I was inside, the whole system. So maybe I was still not appreciating as much. But I think taking a step back, you start to see, you appreciate more. And I, just while we are talking, I just remembered what my grandmother said, I should have let you go a long time back. Because then she never thought that I would go to US and I would be supporting her. I would supporting her in all her rituals and religious journey. I think she was very shocked. So I think sometimes we take it for granted, a lot of things, and only when we lose or when we are away from it, we appreciate it. So I think this generation, because if they don't continue, then once it's lost, it's lost. A lot of people don't realize still the quality of artwork we still have. So when we used to do almost biannual exhibition in High. We started with Jewels of Newar Art in 2011. Actually, that was the first exhibition we did. And even Newar's were like, do you think, people will appreciate this? And I was very offended by it. Because it's like you really need to see art from a totally different perspective. You really need to understand that what you have is so precious. And I think when you have, you don't appreciate it. And I think that's really, for a lot of artists, actually, that was the first time when they were publicly appreciated and honored. And before that, they were not even in connection with each other. I mean, if you're relatives, if you're from the same place, then they knew each other. But if they're from, anywhere far off, or Poa painters versus statue makers, whatever, they were not connected to each other. So I think, that whole thing really one thing leads to another. And that we did with our 25 years of collection. So that was in 2011. Then we, continued in Hyatt. And it was, a lot of people were just like simply amazed at the quality of artwork we still have. Mm-hmm. And it's important to continue. And the continuation is the younger generation. So it's like that whole education part and how to make younger generation interested in what they have. It's not that what they don't have, it's what they have. And at the same time, how to create a market for it. Because without financial gain, it's not going to continue regardless of however beautiful, exquisite they are. So it's like, it's trying to balance both between creating excellent pieces as well as, finding a market for it. And for us as Bodhisattva International, preserving it here, making a museum so that the young, Nepalis don't have to go to international museums to see their exceptional work, which still continues. And we are like, antiques should be wherever they should be.
That's right.
And worship wherever they should be. But it's the living art you really need to appreciate, because that's what's going to take it forward. Antiques are not going to make you, it's very, very important, within temples, within, whatever context, but it's only if the living art continues, then it really takes it forward. And younger generation, and youth, which are so important.
How important do you think it is to, collect art?
One of the things we really wanted to do was for Nepalis and others to be collectors, to really own really beautiful piece of artwork. I think because I grew up, my journey with my husband has been like, art has been like the integral part of our life. I cannot think of my life without art. Mm-hmm. It has to be surrounded by art. My bedroom has to be surrounded by art. My whole house has to be surrounded by art. So I think, once you start to appreciate it, then you really also feel the need to collect them. Whether it's for you or for your, next generation. Because I think art really also gives you a quality of life which cannot be brought by others. Where you can be as rich as you want, but I think art really enhances your mental health, mm-hmm. Your spiritual health. It really brings totally a different personality in you. Even as I said, when I was, we don't have a system where caregivers or especially like in armed conflict in situation, there was no one to help us. We would help others, but there was no one to really detoxify our own trauma. So that being around art really helped me, and I think that could be in any other context, not just armed conflict is the extreme example, but even just watching, sitting in front of a art piece, I think you really can have such a calming effect. That's what I would say. I think people should be collectors, but it's not, not for everyone. But it's also, cultivated. It's not something like it's a genetic or something, it's really cultivated. You really start to look around and really start to see how beautiful art is. Like, even if you look at a pillar, just go to any temple and if you just look at the pillar and understand the meaning of the carving in each of the the pillars, it's just amazing. You don't have to really get masterpieces. Even in small or different pieces of artwork, you can really find a lot of meaning.
So now that we talked about how important it is to collect art and what value it could hold in a person's heart, and how it comes from within to be a collector and stuff like that. But suppose young people like me, as we want to take this art forward, if we were supposed to start, collecting as of right now, how do you think? Could you have any suggestions as how this journey begins? And
A friend of mine, she went to Smith with me, and now she is in World Bank.
Okay.
But even when she was in undergrad, when she had no money, she started to collect art pieces. Then it was like, $200 for a student. $200 is a lot of money.
Yeah, this is a very good thing. Like, people think in order to be collectors, you need to be very rich.
Not necessarily. Then, it was cheap. This was like, let's say, early 90s, But, you really start small. You don't have to have big, it has to have meaning for you, And last time she came here, she was like just so shocked and said, "Oh my God, I'm so happy I started to collect when I was so young, when other people spend money on other things." She didn't have money, but she still wanted to buy, a $200 worth of one Buddha. I think she bought a Buddha avatar. And she was like, that's how she started. So you can really start small. You don't have to have, the masterpiece of whatever. You can start really something small, and then, that's how you really get it. And the reason we have gift shop is the paintings are so expensive. So we made canvas prints so that people can buy it and have it in their rooms. A lot of time what we find is they buy, when they have such beautiful art in Nepal, they will buy something, from a different country, which is like a cheap stuff. So imitation stuff. So you can have something beautiful, but we made the print so that it's accessible and affordable. And we are trying to make some of the statues in that way, but it's been a real challenge because we wanted to make really beautiful, at the same time cheap. It's been a nightmare. Let's put it that way. We are still working on it, but you can start something small. You don't have to have really, even, this piece, I wore this today because it is done by one of the carvers. And because it's done manually and by this artist, it is more expensive than what you think. But, it's a small thing to start with, but, you don't have to have original piece, to start with. You could have something more, a replica or something. So I think it could be something really small, and then you start really, as you grow up, as your taste change, you can change it. That's how I see it. I remember when I was in US, I used to have lots of silver jewelry. I enjoyed it. People liked it because it's different. It's very traditional Newar stuff. And I wore it all the time. So, start with small. It doesn't have to be big. And that's, something that, young people could afford. That's how I would say it starts.
That's true. I'm starting to be a collector as well. So coming towards the end of this podcast, so is there any vision you have for Bodhisattva Gallery for upcoming future or the years to come?
One thing I really wanted to do is the art competition, Anjana Shakya Memorial Art Award. I want it to be, a January time when everyone can come and really have feast for their eyes, but also can buy. Not only in Nepal, but like what's it's like in New York, the Asia Week. I want it to be something like that, so that it's a space for artists, and it's a space where collectors can come. That's something I really want to do it, and I want this art to be continued. It's also my husband's legacy, but it's something I feel like what we have. We have world-class heritage. I mean, I'm repeating this on and on and on. It's a living heritage that we, if not us, who will do it?
True.
So that this is also one reason why we focus in Newar art, is because if we don't appreciate it, if we don't take it forward, it's going to die. It's like any other art. So we want to focus on Newar art, but at the same time, probably we would be open to more Newar theme. Actually, sometimes I think people have wrong idea that we only work with Newars. Actually, even in the competition, the first one, we had somebody ask from France that if he or she, I'm not sure who, they could participate, and it's open to everybody. It's like something that it's a Newar tradition that has to be followed. It's the Newar artwork that has to be followed, and anyone can compete. It has nothing to do with who does it. It's the style, it's the system, it's the culture and tradition that needs to be continued. And the other thing is, like, really, we want the youth to take it over. We want youth to be interested. We want them to be interested, and because they are the ones who continue. If they are not there, then it's not going to it's going to die. And even when my husband started, it was at the very low point, because the artists were not being respected, not paid well, whereas my husband was like, be creative. Within the boundary of iconography, be creative. Bring out the best in you. So even if you look at any of the statues, it's still different from what you will see in the market or in other galleries, because of how it is done. The kind of freedom, the kind of respect and dignity that's given, and the financially, reward that you get is very different. So even if it is same artist, it's still done differently. So I think that's what it is. I mean, I want to continue that whole thing, that how to make this art even better than what it has been, because this has been our vision, is to make it as best as possible.
So now that this podcast will be releasing on Women's Day, do you have anything to tell the women out there?
What I would, I would like more women to be part of this, and I think, only when you do more, practice more, you are going to be, the best. The problem is, like, a lot of times, the women don't have that time to do it. But, it's the passion and it's the priority you make in your life. That's what I would say, Sometimes it's hard, but, if you are passionate about it, you can do it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was lovely having a conversation with you. I hope we could get you on Kunj more often, because I feel people will love it, and I loved it more than anything else. So thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for inviting me in to the session. Thank you.